Dear neurodivergent women, today I'm going to read you a story that I wrote about what it's like to live with both autism and ADHD and the conflict that this can create. I hope you enjoy it. Some days I feel like there are two completely different women living within me. One is a highly qualified research fellow working at a prestigious university, and the other is a debauched Courtney Love 90s era. If Autistic Hannah walked into a bar, she'd order a glass of water and leave as quickly as possible. ADHD Hannah would order a Blue Wicked and a shot of tequila and dance all night on the tables. This is what it can be like when ADHD and autism coexist. Two very different women in one mind and body. According to scientific literature, 50 to 70% of individuals with autism spectrum disorder also present with attention deficit disorder. Although I don't like to call them disorders, I like to say they are conditions. It's a complex experience that can be hard to understand, even for those of us who it affects. One of us is ordered, quiet, likes routines. The other is a chaotic risk taker who makes impulsive decisions that we often regret. Lately, my ADHD side has been particularly dominant, leading to a series of mishaps. Let me share some of these recent misadventures with you. For the past 2 weeks, I've been unwittingly applying face wash to my face instead of moisturiser, thinking it was moisturiser. The two products share a similar consistency and inhabit a nearly identical glass pot on my shelf, but obviously they're very different. Even as my skin grew increasingly dry and burned, I attributed it to the impending winter. This oversight, discovered much later, is a peak ADHD moment. But the chaos doesn't end with skincare. The other day, I attempted to make myself a cup of tea no less than 3 times. Each time, I returned to the kettle to find a cup of oversteeped tea. When I finally succeeded in brewing a proper cup of tea, I promptly forgot about it, rediscovering it stone cold. I reheated it, only to let it cool down again. I contemplated a second reheating, but refrained as I thought it might not be safe. So all that effort going to making cups of tea, and I never got to enjoy even one of them. Around my house, I attempt to put on reading glasses until I realise that I am already wearing them. I frequently misplace my keys, I frequently misplace my phone. Often I'll find my phone just next to my laptop, still presenting those notifications that I'd read only minutes before. Preparing for an upcoming holiday, I impulsively ordered 13 summer dresses online, fearing I had nothing to wear in extreme heat. I opened a box of clothes in the spare room only to find boxes of gorgeous summer dresses I'd completely forgotten that I owned. Out of everything recently, I was the most annoyed when I lost my lunch. Yes, I lost my lunch in my own home. Had it in my hands only seconds before. I eventually found it on a side table. I must have put it down on my way to doing something super important, which I have now also thoroughly forgotten. Nowadays, my ADHD symptoms are not usually as extreme as this. I suspected that a recent HRT overdose might be contributing to this heightened state of ADHD-fueled chaos, but I wasn't sure exactly how. Constantly, I stumble across articles and studies about the intricate interplay between neurodivergence, hormones, menopause, and chronic health conditions. While fascinating, the complexity is overwhelming. I follow a thread only to have it branch off into 5 more, leaving me lost in a labyrinth of information. I know understanding these connections is important, but it feels unachievable. However, recently I attended an ADHD and Women Summit in Manchester, and I learned so many fascinating things, including the powerful effect of estrogen, or the lack of it, on ADHD symptoms. I learned this from Dr. Annika Tomlinson, a senior postdoctoral researcher at the University of Oxford. It makes sense now that after reducing my estrogen, after overdosing on it, my ADHD symptoms could flare up. I'd be highly embarrassed if anyone were to find out about my chaotic behaviour while symptoms are high, so why not write a blog post about it and record it here on YouTube? But what's perhaps interesting for those who don't have ADHD is that through all of this chaos, my mood remains surprisingly good. This is because my dopamine levels, despite fluctuating wildly, create a curious sense of equilibrium. My brain thrives on the unpredictability, finding moments of joy and creativity even amongst the mishaps and the forgetfulness. However, there is a constant underlying hum of dopamine-seeking behaviour. A few months ago, I started following the glucose goddess protocol to combat intense sugar cravings, which were making me feel terrible energetically and impacting my self-esteem. Miraculously, the cravings vanished, and I remained sugar-free completely for a few weeks. My ADHD symptoms lessened significantly. I had read that ADHD symptoms are exacerbated in children via sugar, but weirdly I hadn't made the connection that it would probably affect adults too. I thought I had cracked some kind of secret code. Then, as always, a period-induced need for a large bag of Maltesers derailed everything, reviving cravings and impulsive tendencies. Despite knowing and engaging in healthier dopamine sources like running, walking, yoga, and balanced routines, falling into a sugar-induced spiral challenges the discipline I need to escape it. When I'm in autistic mode, there's no way I would let a shred of sugar pass my lips. I could say my willpower was at its strongest, but that wouldn't be a good description because willpower doesn't even come into it. I just decide I will or won't do something, and I am as unmovable on that as a stone. I try to stay in autistic mode as much as possible. It gets me where I need to be. I can carefully assess what I currently want to achieve, whether that's peak well-being, losing weight, or creating something meaty like a book. And then I can put like a thoroughly researched plan in place to achieve it, and I follow it to the letter until I don't. My ADHD brain hates the rigid structure of my safe autistic life. I begin to feel so unbelievably bored and like I'm living in a prison. My mind starts screaming, act impulsively, travel, eat sugar, scroll Instagram, buy things, go on dates, get other quick dopamine fixes now. The way I try and manage these conflicting states is to allow myself small, manageable experiences for my ADHD. Sometimes I can manage this and sometimes I cannot. Like a continuous game of volleyball where I'm the only player. I sprint to each side of the court while the ball is still in motion, hoping not to lose a point. Sometimes I don't make it in time. It is exhausting and it can be upsetting. As a young girl, Autistic Hannah was the quiet geek in the top sets at school. She wore sensible clothing and spent her free time reading and researching obscure topics in the library. ADHD Hannah was a rebellious teenager wearing a miniskirt. She was often in detention for swearing at teachers or bunking off to smoke or flirt with older boys. She left school with no GCSEs. They were both me. Nowadays, Autistic Hannah is a middle-aged woman who wears only natural fibres, eats only whole foods at very specific times, walks in nature every day, and goes out socially once a month to a carefully orchestrated dinner party with low lighting and carefully curated guests. She thrives on order, healthy habits, and a carefully planned social interactions. ADHD Hannah is a middle-aged woman who travels the world alone, bonding with strangers, spends too much money on clothes that she will only wear once, eats cake and chocolate and processed foods, and she cannot keep a room tidy. She's impulsive, thrill-seeking, and prone to social faux pas. These two distinct personalities, while seemingly incompatible, coexist within me, creating an internal dynamic that's admittedly fascinating, right? But also extremely challenging. It's like roommates who argue about crumbs on the kitchen worktop, but forced to share the same apartment forever. I started this post by saying that my ADHD had been particularly dominant. This isn't usually the case anymore. I would say I did spend the majority of my 20s and 30s in ADHD, and I had the life to show for it. Now, generally, I'm more in autistic mode and I have the life to show for it. Until recently, I didn't know if my ADHD symptoms are usually less so, generally because I'm older. I considered that maybe my brain chemistry was different, or maybe I was just tired and I didn't have the same energy to engage in the frivolity of my ADHD mind as much. But this does not align with the research, which finds that perimenopause and menopause can be a time when ADHD symptoms are at their worst. But at the Manchester Summit for ADHD for women, I also learned from Dr. Annika, and I've never heard this before, which is absolutely crazy that we don't know this, that taking HRT, therefore increased estrogen, can significantly reduce ADHD symptoms in perimenopausal women. So maybe this is why I have fewer ADHD symptoms generally. Who knows? Maybe I'll never know. Maybe that's okay. I suppose it's worth noting that no matter how much trouble my ADHD causes me, I am intensely in love with my ADHD brain. It makes my life rich, wild, and exciting. Indeed, I'm recording this today from Vietnam. So it's been over 3 years now since I discovered that I was AuDHD, so that's AuDHD, autism and ADHD combined, and I'm still learning more about myself and about the conditions, and things are getting better and things are becoming more manageable. But it is a continual quest to balance these two very different things, these two very different aspects of who I am. So I hope you enjoyed my little story there. So listen, I write most Sundays. I'm a writer and a coach for neurodivergent women. So if you want to hear more of this work, you can, for free, you can sign up to my Substack, which I will link. It's called The Unmasked Woman. And then if you are a neurodivergent business owner, you can sign up for my free strategies, because it's free business strategies, because if you are neurodiverse, then mainstream neurotypical business practices are not going to work for you. So I'll put the link to that there as well. Thank you so much for listening.